So we recited in English, page number 6, Refuge Prayer. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly, by the two accumulations created by practicing generosity and the other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. The four immeasurables. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from happiness that is without suffering. May they dwell in great equanimity, free from attachment to some and aversion to others. So Tashidele, greetings to everyone. So are you all a little bit tired at this point? So then, before we move on to the text itself, wherein we will cover the 6 great perfections from here on, maybe it's a good idea to recapitulate what we were discussing about in the sessions yesterday, especially when we're talking about generation of the altruistic intention, the 21st and the 22nd verse. So generating the mind is the central axle of the supreme vehicle path. It's the foundation and the support of all expansive deeds. To all instances of two accumulations, it is like the elixir of gold. It's the treasury of merits, containing myriad collections of virtues. Recognizing these truths, the heroic bodhisattvas uphold the precious supreme mind as the heart of their practice. So if we remember, then if you want to cultivate your practice on the Mahayana path, then the door through which you enter the Mahayana path is exactly this generation of the altruistic intention. So one cannot do without generating this altruistic intention to enter the Mahayana vehicle, which is known as the supreme vehicle path. And the reason why this Mahayana path is called the Mahayana path or the supreme vehicle path is exactly because of this altruistic intention, which is an expensive motivation which takes into account all sentient beings. So, and then and then the seven precepts of causes and fruit. We had quite a detailed discussion about that in the sessions yesterday. So then at this point it is important to recognize that at the heart of the practice in the Mahayana path, then it is exactly this generation of the altruistic intention. One cannot ever forget about this intention once one sets on the path of the Mahayana vehicle. Thus. So then when we're talking about the Mahayana vehicle or the Mahayana path, then this is not to say that the Mahayana path is the best out of all the three paths that exist in Buddhism, the Hinayana path, the Theravada path. This is to say that this is the nature of the effort it takes to enter and engage the Mahayana path of practice. So when we're thinking about the different vehicles such as the Hinayana, Theravada and Mahayana, then it is a gradual process of progressing from one path to the other path. And as we already know now, the difference between this path is the scope of the motivation and the scope of the motivation. So then one cannot begin to say that one path is lesser than the other, because as we know that in order to build a step or a ladder, in order to climb a ladder, one cannot immediately jump to the top of the ladder. One has to first start from the first, second, third rungs of ladder in order to reach the top of the ladder. So this is the manner in which we need to understand the differences between the different vehicles or different vehicles of path in Buddhism. Yes. So then, as we started this session, this course or this retreat, with an extensive discussion on what is exactly the Buddhist approach, with the introduction to Buddhist view, Buddhist practice, and then we went on to discuss a little bit about the 10 non-virtuous actions and how one can learn and practice to guard oneself against giving into these 10 non-virtues. And then we discussed a little bit about the life of the Buddha himself, and then we had a discussion on the Four Noble Truths, the first teaching that the Buddha gave, and in that discussion we explored the different types of suffering, where suffering comes from, and now from here on the discussion will pertain to one of the most famous practice that is known worldwide, the practice of the 6 great perfections in Buddhism. And out of this, the first perfection that we are going to discuss is the perfection of generosity. Yes. perfections before we discuss each one in detail. So the 6 great perfections are generosity, morality, forbearance, perseverance, concentration, and wisdom. So then we repeat again. The 6 great perfections are generosity, morality, forbearance, perseverance, concentration, and wisdom. Is everybody able to note this down? So then the first of these 6 great perfections is the perfection of generosity. And then generally, when we're talking about the general act of generosity, then it is understood that there is a sense of giving in this act, not only through motivation, but an active act of giving. This is the nature or the definition of the general idea of generosity. And herein there exist different forms of giving, wherein you give material possessions, or wherein you give your time to teach other people something. So these are all forms of generosity. But then when we're talking about the great perfection of generosity, then its nature is a little bit different, wherein the practitioner has to understand that in order to cultivate the perfection of generosity, then with regards to the object of generosity, with regards to the thing or the time or which he is giving, and with regards to the person to whom he is giving this, the practitioner has to view all these things as intrinsically empty of the practitioner has to view these 3 things as empty of intrinsic nature. Yes.
주킹이 천자도 그래서 아니 마신도 집이 있지 세지 근데 아니 프로젝트에 아니 로고로 힌트를 가르나 근데 아니 선제 친구들 가라는 이제 세기 줘봐 이제 상주선 줘봐 딱 맞아 가서 상주선 봐 이제에 대한 상주선 봐라 보라 근데 이제 봐레스 아니 디야 가는 근데 이제 뭐 땅으로 수고 아니 근데 지도에 있는 이베 잡아 쇼주 드롭에 시스 제가 아니 근데 이제 딱 이제 마치고 말이죠. 다가가 계속 같이 들어서 내가 지어에는 결혼에 게다 이름이 샤로지다라니까 되는지고 말을 하시기 게다 쇼지도 책으로 책이었어.
So then the verse, the 23rd verse, which begins to explore the first of the 6 great perfections, generosity, starts. Giving is the wish-granting jewel that satisfies the wishes of all beings. It's the best weapon to cut the constricting knots of miserliness. It's an undaunted deed of the Bodhisattva giving birth to courage. It's the basis to proclaim one's fame throughout all 10 directions. So then, the act of generosity and especially the perfection of generosity, and herein we could simply understand it as the act of generosity, the act of giving, is the wish-granting jewel that satisfies the wishes of all beings. So then we know from experience that when we act out of generosity, then we begin to fulfill other people's needs, other people's wishes, without a sense of expectation, without being motivated by a sense of expectation. So this is why it is compared to a wish-granting jewel, and it's the best weapon to cut the constricting knots of miserliness. So then we know that when you begin to give, then naturally it's an antidote to this sense of holding on to your own possessions, and holding on to your own material possessions and so forth. So then it's the best antidote to overcome miserliness, this act of giving. And it's an undoubted deed of the Bodhisattva giving birth to courage. So then it is the conduct of a Bodhisattva to constantly engage in acts of generosity, which further motivates them to practice. And then it's the basis to proclaim one's fame throughout all directions. So without actually actively seeking fame or some sort of status, then when you begin to practice generosity without any sense of expectation, then fame is just a natural byproduct of it.
아니 대다시니다 근데 정말에 자와지 보이바 이게 내가 공부를 봐 아니 지금 내가라서 라싱이 뭐예요 봐 아니 다 근데 초도시가 세네기 예부터 근데 초도시가 이봐 하고니 대다시네라다 나 공부 시시하게 무슨 내가 시네 아니 다 제마당디가 가서는 류류다 따야래 농주다라 류다 와서 지 땅을 이제 소 패션 이제 무슨 딱 가고 딱 가시 근데 소소기 소리 땅통인도 와 근데 뭐지지 아니 개초를 소소는 소리 신소를 따서 겨 가서 싸워야 겨들어야 이제 막아 통화도 되려 아니 노스서 동위에서 남산 케베 댄스 근데 아니 지금 뭐지 개자를 쓰고 근데 막 땅통인도 아니 케바 땅에 되는 거 근데 냠이 치래스라 케베 댄스 아니 내저 얘기하냐면 개자를 치래 근데 이제 다니 지금 그러냐 아니 얘기들이 개발도 저기 집어넣어서 얘야 근데 그냥 미치기스 아니 지 다바터는 얘 가서 집은 찬스이네 이제다 근데 그냥 미치쇼스.
So then realizing these quality of actually practicing and cultivating generosity, then knowing this, the learned ones seek the excellent path of giving away entirely their body, wealth and virtues. I, a yogi, have practiced in this manner. You aspire for liberation, too should do likewise. So then, as we already established the positive qualities and positive effect of cultivating the practice of generosity, then the learned ones, who seek the excellent path to liberation, practice this perfection of generosity by giving away entirely their body, wealth and virtues. So these are the forms of generosity that it's For us, maybe giving away entirely our body is a little bit difficult, and but we can begin to start practicing generosity by giving away material possessions and giving our time to people who need them. And then also we can learn to dedicate the virtues that we have accumulated for the sake of all sentient beings. That's it. So then it is a mistaken notion that we feel that if we are not materially well off, then we cannot even begin to practice generosity, saying that I am a student or I'm not well off. This is not the case. In Buddhism, we talk about there being 3 or 4 types of generosity that one can practice, wherein the first one is giving away material possessions, and then the second one is the generosity of teaching the Dharma, then the third one is the generosity of life itself, and then in some interpretations, then the fourth one is posited, which is the generosity of love itself. Yes. So then the first of this type of generosity, the generosity of giving away material possessions, then in the Tibetan culture, then people begin to offer money and donation to the monastic institutions. They begin to offer alms in support of people who are poor, and especially during the fourth month of the lunar calendar, then they begin to make donations. They begin to actively support people who are poor on the streets, and then they also begin to free animals in captivity, or animals who are at the who are about to be slaughtered during this month. So even though there is this belief that during this month the kind of virtue one accumulates are increased tenfold, but then this is a general attitude that Tibetans as a culture have towards the act of giving, wherein they understand that materially they can begin to donate and offer support to monastic as well as poor people on the street, and then they also understand that the act of freeing animals from captivity and the act of freeing animals from slaughter also constitutes an act of generosity. Yes. So then this is not to say that only the Tibetans know how to practice generosity. When we look at the world in general, then there are many examples from which we can be inspired. For example, when we go to the town in Dharamsala during these days, when the weather is very hot, there are many people who stop the cars and give water and distribute water to everyone who needs water. So just simple acts can inspire a lot of people, and especially in the Hindu and the Sikh tradition, in the temples and in the places of worship. Then there are mass kitchens which offer free food free of cost to anyone who visits or anyone who needs a plate of meal. So, and then this is in turn supported by the faithful people who donate to make this possible. So we can all be inspired by these examples. Yes. So then, even when you extend it to countries, then many developed countries actively support foreign aid, and they begin to help underdeveloped countries and poor countries with financial aid in the form of health support, in the form of medicines, in the form of infrastructure building, community building, and so forth. So then, generosity is not something that we can only begin to explore with this text itself in a page. We need to kind of look at how countries' relations and all these things can be motivated by a sense of generosity that is without expectation. So then, generosity, then we should understand, is not only confined to giving away material things. We can begin to offer words of comfort to other people who are in distress by counseling them. This is an act of generosity too, and we can begin to offer support, emotional support to people who are in need of love. This is the generosity of love itself. So, generosity is not only confined to giving away material possessions. Yes. 미가는 취해질래. 미가는 미sem가는 취해질래. So I don't remember which Lama or Rinpoche said this, but I remember hearing that just the simple act of offering a smile to someone else is also an act of generosity, because this brings a sense of comfort, a sense of joy in other people. So then we need to remember that when we actually cultivate the practice of generosity, then it should be free from a concern about gaining fame, or it should be free from concerns about expecting something in return. This we need to remember, otherwise the motivation is not so pure. Yes.
데 가서 그런 상황나 지게라 아니 근데 당토야다 아니 지가 무슨 정말 지게 뭐 가라 나와 있는 수준이 당바지도 되는라 그래서 정말 대박만 되게 시기나 그런 거 당토는 들려야 주체도 손을 채라
So then, of course, the simple act of giving itself, just because of the act, you accumulate virtue. But then it is not such a profound virtue because it has been already sullied by an impure motivation when you have a sense of expectation, or when you are concerned only about gaining fame, thinking that if I give these things, then people will begin to talk about my act of generosity. So this is not the way to approach generosity. If you can, then when we're talking about the perfection of generosity, then one is encouraged to look at the act of generosity, the person through which you are giving your time or material things to, and all these things as empty of inherent or empty of inherent existence. So they are not established objectively at all. So if you begin to adopt such an attitude, then your concerns are not about fame and all that. The motivation begins to become pure.
네, 단다 상신도 다 추기 점발라 이거를 지라 지금 შემ만나가 손셔지 추기 뭐 되게 잘하네 아니 수수기 지금 만들 취향다 냐면 가르치기 아니 밀어 봐야지 대시제라 미신들 세배체 좀 딱 봐 나와 나 같이 되고 예 아니 추기 점발 제라 되게 샴베 점발해야 돼 이 버티비 가면 투자 제보 수수인데 이거는 뭐 그런 넘어다 버리냐 이 마치 시와이는 알아 수지라게 되고 상가래 또 모두는 되고 뭐라 아니 시와는 아미 깨라 친구를 저렇게 버리는 데서 데레지가 레와다 땅다 현라 내가 가지고 아주 제발 상마치 해요 미 카르라나 수이 보이는데 지금 카르에 버리나 밀을 편에 끊는 나와 시와이는 오늘 저녁에 제발 친구들 참아라
So then it's similarly when we were talking about the practice, the generosity of the Dharma itself, wherein you begin to teach and you begin to teach other people, then it is an act of generosity. But even in this case, if you are motivated by a sense of wanting to gain fame, or you are concerned about gaining something from this act of generosity, then it is no longer motivated. It is no longer a pure motivation. You're not doing it out of a pure motivation. So then it's not advised. One should always, the motivation in the act of giving should always be pure, not sullied by a sense of wanting fame, or not sullied by a sense of wanting something from the situation. Thus.
민지 비째 그 말에 나도 치트를 좀 상제기 치라. 제가 과를 예술을 마사리 되게 되게 감사히 과를 접해야지 상제만 저기 거기 가봐. 근데 지난 아주 치료랑 되는 쇼츠마저 체크를 상제는 지금 나도 접하고 있다.
니 심지어 나도 세다도 아니지라. 어디 접지 봐 저기 말해.
접지 말라는 정말 접지만 친구들 차이나. 아다 고소리지 소리요. 나도 두고라.
So then another form of generosity is the generosity of offering refuge. And in this instance, the ultimate sort of refuge, normal people like us, we cannot offer such a refuge from the suffering of samsara itself. This can only be offered by someone who is a Buddha or a Bodhisattva. But the conventional sort of refuge can be offered by people like us, wherein we can begin to support animals who are being slaughtered. We can free them and offer them refuge. And we likewise in areas where there are political strife and conflicts, we can begin to offer them refuge from these things. Yes.
아주 생각나는 거기지 가르면도 자부가 이마도 챙겨라. 되게 챙긴다. 제가 이렇게
So then it is important to remember that when we feel that the little bit of contribution in the form of money or whatever that one can make, it doesn't really begin to doesn't really have an effect at all. This is not the attitude to adopt. Like even if you have only 10 rupees, even if you have like only a few rupees in your hand, if you want to practice generosity, then out of a pure motivation, you should give that money to someone who you think it will help, because when we're talking about institutions that are asking for donations, or a person on the street who's asking for donation for money, then if we do that, then he can save that up, or the institution can save that money up, and gradually he through like many donations like this, they are able to achieve whatever they want to achieve. So it's important to remember that when you have the hesitation that it's just 10 rupees, I won't even get a cup of tea for this, or why should I give it to it wouldn't really help him. You shouldn't have such an attitude.
이마 나라에 있는 더블치즈가 소리 양면으로 싸는더라. 다른 사람들 배셔요 말고 다른 사람들 수도 바스를 신다고 해요. 내 나가는 놈이 두고도. 내가 여기 딱 봤을 때 사실은 이게 더 돼. 당한테 너무 이것도 하는 시가 되게 되려 봐. 근데 너무 지리 그 이제 지리녀서 제라 이게 이렇게는 가는 거로 찍찍이다. 잠도 수도 돼야 되는데 근데 진짜 뭐 저서로 체인지. 그러면 아 근데 삼유이가 제가 먼저 뒤에 정보 차리나 뭐 별로 뭐 치고 이제 맞아. 정보들 공부하시자. 공부들 이제 자야다 공부했다. 지금 그다음에 수업이 유유유유 해석하라 옛날에 담설라 옛날에 시작하라. 먼저 공부하는 공부하지 시작해. 직접적으로 내가 또 뭐가도 있다. 미 아니 이제 좀 저도가 저랑 보다 먼저 내 롱이다. 아니 미가신 이제 하나 공부 좀 못하는데 애들 제대로 근데 쭈쭈쭈쭈는 사이도 가신 이제 이제 가신이 하나 보다 나가 쓰면 매는 거더라. 아직 미 그가 나라 좀 그가 쳐들이다. 아 미 공부 때는 나한테는 딜라 티비컬 아니 가이 나주로 좀 나주로 제 기부로도 얘한테 알아서 된다 소소기 사야다 말인데 공부하더라. 근데 미 바이 남주들에 빼라리 다시 공주로 이제 무지 막 그거를 이제는 스틱 내온다. 네 애들로 제가야 제가 아주 드디어 내가 공무가 주들이 싸니 아니 쇼 이런 싸는 거는 공부한다 하다가 이제 들어가. 그래서 빅데니 되게 도스를 뭐 어떤 때야. 됐다. 이 신진이 좀 안에 나라에 가지고 지금 논의들 톤아 소소는 망보에 날에 뉴에 수수 짱짱짱지다. 백고는 한번 가봐지고 때 빅기 좀 그러시 제게더라. 제가 소소 파견로가 되고 아니 저한테 티우다. 이만 하고 오면 아 이게 뉴 때는 뭐 찾아래. 이때는 그 지리지마도랑 제제도랑 가르면서 이런 제기야. 근데 때 전부 때 제기더라. 네 소소를 냐면 빠르거든. 네 시에도 빅기 좀.
So then when I was a student in the nunnery, and then we didn't really have a lot of money with us, and we sometimes have to travel to town to buy things, and we used to have at that time at most like 4 or 5 rupees with us, and with that money we have to travel to town to Ramsala, and then we run into a lot of beggars in those day and age. Nowadays we don't see them a lot, but in those days we run into a lot of beggars. And then I used to have a sense of agitation, one because I do not have so much money myself, and then like even if I give him or give them 1 rupee, then I used to have this hesitation in my head that would this really help this person, and this just like 1 rupee that I can afford to give him. So I used to have a sense of hesitation back in the day, like that. But it changed when I realized that any form of like support is appreciated, because we decided later on that the place where I was born in Tibet, we were going to build a monastery there, and then we were doing a donation drive and asking people for donation to build such a monastery. And then we had to ask for donation in the southern monasteries where the Tibetan settlements are, and then we started to do one here in Dharamsala in front of the Dalai Lama's temple, and we set up a booth and asked people for donation, that this money is going towards the construction of a monastery in Tibet. And at that moment, then I started to realize that the gesture itself is appreciated, irrespective of the amount of money one donates. Because there are some people who say, I only have few money, but I'm going to donate 10 rupees. I'm going to donate 100 rupees. And so when you begin to see that, as you actively ask other people for donation, in that position, then you realize that the gesture itself is very appreciated. And then through that collection of these small donations that we received, then we were actually able to build a monastery in my native town in Tibet. So from here, when you yourself are in that position, then you begin to realize that any form of support when you really need it, and the very gesture of such an act of generosity is very much appreciated. So one should never like have a hesitation that would my small contribution be appreciated, or would it really help? So from there onwards, I always like make it a point to give whatever little I can to people who are asking for help, people who are asking for money. Yes.
That is some down there. Then also better chill a shower. That's it. You love to let you down in a way. See, and in a bullet down and can go down and that's much better. Then Narada did some down and do the homage to the street in the college of Moments Jenny and take to Balashire. He comes in Yamatani, that woman, Jenny just has a time. And then meeting Tasha do the body travel, which is very they got another which name on the door. And that open didn't know Yamek Panto in dead and in Murmur. So the Gomuchi did go to Taylor, the penny hall about it, right? Initially, the pen to judgment later. Then another
So then we need to now look at this example that we are talking about, and then extend it to anyone who needs help, people who are sick, people who are old, people who are incapable of looking after themselves. So we need to really offer them any help that we can. And now this is the kind of reason why any small act of generosity is very profound, because in that when we went asking people for donation to build a monastery, then many people offered like only a little bit of money, like 10 rupees, saying that this is the best that they can afford to give. But then that 10 rupees has went on to build a monastery in Tibet, which is now becoming a seat of learning, and then there are the admissions of monks and nuns coming into these monasteries, increasing year by year, and now this has a profound effect on generations and generations of people wanting to study the Dharma, and the person who donated 10 rupees has a hand in this. So this is the profoundness of the act of generosity. Yes. So maybe if there are any questions about the perfection of generosity. Yes.
Like in terms of material possession, because this is like, it's a world of desire, you could say, everybody wants things, so they will be very accepting of it. But what about the generosity of teachings? Because normally people will face, I think, face kind of a backlash, or will not want to use. So yeah, something that would really benefit.
Yes. Tini sansingi jimbala edi tanga edi zamnina mi tsama dekwa chimbarwas. Kola ani juno longju gore tsama goderas. Sansingi jimba ani migi kele yana da pendegi chi diyo go marisra. Da jimba tanga ya migi lengirwa. Sansingi jimba chura. Jimba tangsa migi leyana da keyo marwa. Kanya ro da koi lenjan chingwas. Tanga zogi chuji jimba la chi songwas. Chuji jimba de la ani peche zamling na mi ju de zo ganga ge ni chue la de la chi meba yo mare. Chue la de la chi Chöle di Pajimanda Madridizoma dis Kanyano Shukshmuti Manues.
예, 주일에 되게 주 되는 요지 가지래 저. 또 전번에 저는 선생이 전번에 너무 상시 혼이야 말에 제가 그때 벌써 너무다. 다시 내가 들어오다 다시 지금 그러지로다 들으려고 하는 거래. 지난 전번에 내가 지금 들어오지야. 전도다 변하지 고발이 취지용이들이는 저는 같이 내 시기에 뛰들래. 그것도 다른 뭐 깔리지 고 본인들 때고. 내가 또 추회를 내가 추회 근데 니니들 좀 내가 추시를 담이 미처마 그렇게 가르쳐봐. 수스를 그걸 그런 얘기 듣는데 뭐 내가 시도는
So then, of course, we need to understand that in both instances, the giving away material possessions and the generosity of the Dharma, the approach is the same. We need to offer it to someone who needs it. So when we are saying that we are practicing generosity in the form of giving material possession, then we do not begin to give it to anyone. We begin to look around for people who really need it. So this is the kind of attitude you need. And similarly, when we're talking about the generosity of the Dharma, or giving these teachings, then we give it to people who are striving for spirituality, who have this inclination to listen to the Dharma. We do not begin to give it to people who wouldn't even begin to open their minds to these teachings.
지나가서 주기 좀 받아야 나가서 지금 막 강마 되는 시에도 로라니 근데 지금 말라 버드는 수준이 지금 랑가 위스토네 코스템 샘스 땅 근데 저 주기 좀 받아야 아니 지금은 내가 가르치는 수준 조금 있나라 저는 leb대로 팸 삼군 넘어 잡아주고 다 시와이는 이제 뭐셔 이 주기 좀 받아야 땅에다 주파이디아 메시고 근데 시고
So then the act of generosity in the form of teaching the Dharma, or the generosity of the Dharma, is not confined only to a formal setting wherein there is a teacher and there is a student, or it does not need the contraptions of calling it a teaching in the first place. If you begin to do that, then it becomes like a forceful education. This is not the case. All forms of offering counsel, well-intended counsel to people who are suffering, people who are under distress, constitutes the generosity of the Dharma. Yes.
I guess this is more of a comment than a question. I think possibly mainly, at least in the West, where the culture is a little bit different, where generosity is more of an exchange, where when you do something for someone, there's this obligation for them to do something back for you. I think it's maybe more prevalent in this part of the world where you do things without the expectation. And when you take that cultural mindset to other parts of the world, people can also look at you with some suspicion. Why are you doing this for me? What do you want from me? Just a comment, just an observation.
The 그런 술라디 트레이닝 직신이 돼서 스타트 티와랑 메스 도선도 지르다 디리도 맞저기 다시 딜라 맞저기 리숑 맞저기 지소도 전에는 지발라도 뭐 파탐 파테딜라 수인지미지 라고요라 비주라 근데 나도 사무실에 땅이 말았어 이내 노조기 지소라 노조기 따져라스라 그런서 공시로 줘라 그래서 얘기처럼 직전에 퍼주디 수에 직접 보여버리지. 디데기지 다우슈 친구여레스. 제장다 계신 안서 디데나나 따져 남바기 따져로 지다라. 남바 공시 주들라. 지발라도 좀 파직되나 아니 딱 수스 레와주어들이 자기 말하면서 지라야 삼삼들이 지금 말와서. 제장다 디데다와 친이 미지 지젤로 도나스라 아리도와다 노초로 도나스라. 거기 미드를 집어다야 고츠나스라. 미드즈 도법에 지기리스 거다. 가지는 주 개부지 수치 고고라게 말아 제산이 도바시 지기리스 됩니다.
그때 리신이 치다가 세상에 리신을 다른 점이 총총 파츠 하고 그거이나 반주 리신가래요. 리신이나 알리가 리신 가래요. 정말 점이 정말 가래요. 참 이번에 상가 지금 이제 가신지 나도 도발에 쓰라 예초를 잡다 주 예초배 쪼지 통면도 상관없어 너네들 쓰라 제가 되게 좀 많아 제가 나 파기래 쇼보이는 저거는 근데 직당하는 그 싫으시래 너도 해요 아주 그런 날 텐데 나 진짜 뭐다 나 남들 나서 해야지 뭐더라 네 되게 좀 많아 제가 되냐 그래서 뭐 되게 되게 지혜가 햄발을 넣어도 다 그거는 히럽에 비슷해 히럽이 원래 되게 비슷해
So then, this is indeed the difference in culture and the ways of way things are approached differently in different cultures. So I can understand that in your culture, if it is like in the West, if it is like that, then I could understand where this comes from. When someone gives you something or someone, then you begin to become suspicious, and I think this suspicion comes from a sense of insecurity. That why is this person giving these things to me? Does he think that I'm poor? Does he think that I'm not financially well off? These are the kind of insecurity which forces this kind of reactions. But now the world is becoming smaller and cultures are coming into contact, and so the Eastern people, the culture could understand and pick things from the Western culture that are helpful, and then the Western culture, as it comes into contact with the Eastern culture, could pick up things from the Eastern culture that is helpful. So it's a matter of understanding which culture approaches things in which way, and so yes, I can understand where this comes from.
세상 단단한 지나서는 나체잖아 제바다다 그런 하고 살아 다 이분이 누가다 지나서 다 아니 지금 불러오면 수술담 내버다나 그렇다면 수하고 냠리 진지거면도 가는다 지가를 라이기 지내지고 수술이 제일 제일 빠시 라 이제 아니에요 다 리슈만도 되는 강의 분이 요번에 말하는 거 같이 하고 있어 내방아 담보들이 아주 그게 유심히가 라이지 나 한번 레이로 이게 맞는 거 그저 치러 같이 우리 쪽으로 이게 거다 아무 주는 건 깜짝으로디 아무 주소도 되라 아 주주는 총알을 상주죠 gem바다 진짜로 그셔지 오래 되고라 내가 어떤 담을 되잖아 맞대 태놈이가 담을 되고 아니 게 뭐셔래 아니 나 내가 싸워도지 너마 우리가 하도 못 된다 이 모두 태솜이 상관없는 쓰레기도 잘라 친구 좀 주고 그래 너 지지 되는 데 있어 그거 아니 잡고 먼저 심박으로 넘어 담으라 다 고주 속에 모두 잘라서 이렇게 키고 그다음에 이게로 맞춰 놔 통화를 가면 너 지지 맨다 그래서 되는 데 있어 항상 다 가는 거 별에 내려 가 마음이 치 이게 모두 가시를 치냐로 제가 별에 출가를 치는 내가 돌아 아니 수제도 제가 돌아도 바로 보고 치는 이게 모두 빼고 치 아니가 말하고 보면 저래 아 주변으로 같이 빼야 다 되기 시간이 길다가 내가 엘리디 컨트리 사무타바네 이제 딘데도 한번 제주를 이제 땅을 가는 거 있어. 나 사실 그거를 기준으로 되는 게 뭐. 제자는 그 외기 준비 하고 있어. 제가 늘 틀고 기기를 지 않잖아. 지금은 그렇지 않은 우리가 그래요. 근데 가리가 좀 하고 내가 또 배우고 뭐야 그렇지. 그래서 한번 요즘에 한번 가게
So then I personally have experiences of this cultural difference when I first came to Thosamling. So the way that we are traditionally raised up in the Tibetan culture is to have a sense of love, care and concern for those who are younger than us, and then to have a sense of respect and reverence to those who are elder, to those who are older than us. So we help both the young and the old in any instance where they need support. So when I first came to Thosamling, I was new to this place. So then there was an elderly nun who was in her 70s, and she was a foreign nun. And as I was returning back from Fatehpur, which is like 15 minutes away from here, and then there is that small bridge that you follow before the boat. So then I realized that this elderly nun was carrying a big luggage on her back. So my natural reaction, instinctive reaction, is to go and help that elderly nun and to carry that myself. So when I went to do that, the elderly nun, the before a nun, she said, "I'm not 80 yet." So I was shocked. What does she mean by that? And even when I insisted, she wouldn't listen. And so then I realized this is the difference in culture. But later on, then she came to know about how it is in our culture, how it makes sense for us to help. Then later on, she used to ask me to help her, can you grab these things from the market for me, so on and so forth. Then we grew close, and we became friends after that.
저는 정말 그런 어디가 잘라는 걸 제야도라 이 엠피는 알 삼키로서라 잠잠하게 이기 땅다 저런 데는 정말 키우진데 그래 답을 잘하게 경험하다 잘하게 뭐 지지도 되는 분이 이기도 땅이더라 그런데 더 진실에 못 살아가는 내게는 한 말아봤다는 근데 미 저를 한 마고는 들리네 하고 집어치고
So then just because there is a difference doesn't mean that we should leave it that. We can learn from each other, like in this instance. So now we've become very friends, and she used to send me emails every day saying that I really remember the time and cherish the time that we had together in Thosamling. I remember your smiley face and how you used to help me to buy things, to how you helped me all that. So we've become really close friends. So I haven't heard from her for a few months now. I don't know if she's how she's doing now, but I hope to hear from her soon too.
제가 리슈 때지 치와요 심심이 게다 두제인데요. 지시요. 무슨 안저 메모스 도. 그래서 파 주장해요. 아니 인지기 일단 실로 슈거든. 다 티켓이 나오도. 이 채널 로봇 치고야 돼요. 왜는 이렇게 그거는 뭐 나오나. 어떻게 이게 아마 저거는 못 타지네. 그걸 지요. 근데 이건 이 리슈네 그래서 미래 지금 원이제 그걸 제가 안 줘서. 아니 저거 그것도 쇼쇼 좀 주고. 아. 미직 짜라고 빼가 나가로 보시는 필요. 지금도 지금도 뭐지 그래요. 점수야 뭐 있어요.
So then these cultural differences shouldn't stop us from interacting with each other and learning from each other and building a relationship with each other. And then there are things that the Tibetans could also learn from the Western people. For example, just talking about generosity or offering help. Western people have the habit of asking someone else before they begin to offer help. Do you need help? Can I help you? Tibetan people don't have that kind of habit. When they see someone struggling in their eyes, they just go, I will help you, just grab everything. So maybe this is too forceful in this day and age. So this is something that the Tibetans can learn from the Western people. Asking people beforehand, do you need help? Can I help you? How is it in the Indian tradition?
It seems just we don't ask, we just help, and it can be forceful. I think it happened with me today in the morning.
What did you say?
Someone was trying something on the toaster and it was on, but they just wanted to switch it off and there was no switch, and I tried to just calculate it. I thought that they're trying to switch it on. So then I felt, but they were just they were looking for the switch to switch it off actually. There was no switch. So I felt I just told them that, it's on, and then later I realized that people needed that and it just interrupted them instead of helping them.
Dearness. Koran jaganale thagarandas pebada chibaris. And tharina de chasons. Shoge biyo pali tasajyo.
We don't
Toaster.
hear no. Like in our culture, we don't hear no. It just.
kunzu rishin na main like shira kosayo maris. Tharing shogeram chichung sonsra. Ani pali tasa toaster jira. Dina na miji pali taya chedi yutong da mo. Pajo midi button do se de dusra. Ani moi peje di peje tanshingi mesar sam. Gejai modin kabdu didir button limga tois. Yemane de martus. Midi lo sega do de dos. Button gi moi roba chega do be khira. Pajo midi lo sega do de dos. Chezamone geja marina yara. Mi roba mo mo yi chile yara. So yi tatis kanya chede do sam na san chom chede dos.
제가 먼저야 로봇 보내 레기로 한가지 시민들 가라 미신바드 시라 라임도 이게 다 소스가 잡혀도 그래. 잠잠에 야보를 밀어 많이 소스 좀 보여. 잠나도 지강이지는 밀어 로봇이나 그냥 이게 뭐시 간에 강이지는 예초라 치라. 형아를 많이 좋아해 보자. 예초라 말아가라 스카는 건데 되게는 버르들의 소스 집고기 강이 치. 그래. 소스 타자는 소스 간에 소스 집고 다니는 밀어 좋아하시는 말이네요. 좀더 지강이. 잠나 파로 바지 서로 바지 하우는 아치우리다.
So then, as it is important to ask people whether they need help, then it's also important to be open enough to say, to ask for help when you need it. This is also important in terms of like anything emotionally and so on and so forth. Because if we always have a strong sense of like, I am independent, I can do things on my own, then you begin to isolate yourself from other people. And then you begin to suffer as a result of that. So in our culture, if you need help, we are very open about it. We say, I cannot do this, I need help. So it's important to have that too, not only just like asking other people, but when you need help, you need to be open enough to say, I need help. Yes. So we overshot by 5 minutes. We break for tea now.